Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. This happened to me about 5 years ago while in college. I'm being deliberately vague because reasons. Background, I landed a job basically office sitting on weekends at a corporate office building. My routine was simple. Arrive at 8 a.m., perform hourly checks of the systems, handle occasional phone calls, and wait for the 4 p.m. person to show up. During the quiet hours, I'd read, stream shows, or play games on my laptop. The actual work probably took up no more than 10 minutes each hour unless something went wrong. This arrangement continued smoothly for a couple of years. The pay was decent, holidays came with double pay, and I could pick up extra weekday shifts when others called in sick. One Tuesday afternoon, while covering a midday shift, my supervisor called me into his office. "We've got an opening for the evening weekday position starting tonight," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Would you be interested?" I nodded immediately. "Absolutely. Great," he replied. "Clock out now and come back at 5 p.m. tonight." The urgency of the transition should be obvious. The new position went smoothly at first. I'd arrive at 4 p.m., handle my duties, and leave at midnight when my relief arrived. The workload was heavier, with more calls to manage, but nothing unmanageable. Then, after 9 months, things started deteriorating. The daytime employee, let's call her Diana, transformed from a pleasant colleague into a complete nightmare. She found fault with everything I did. For instance, one Friday afternoon, a system at a remote site experienced a jam. Diana had called them earlier, but 5 hours later, I noticed the issue persisted. I called the site again to check if they needed additional support, especially since our technical specialist was about to leave for the weekend. "Hey, are you folks still working on that jam from earlier?" I asked. "I noticed it's still showing up in our system." They did need help, and I connected them with the right person. Instead of appreciation for preventing a weekend crisis, I got chewed out the next day. "Why didn't you read my log entry?" Diana snapped during our shift change. "I already handled that situation." When I tried explaining to my supervisor, he dismissed my reasoning. "From now on," he said firmly, "highlight all important entries in the log to prove you've read them." This new normal dragged on. I carefully navigated around Diana during our brief shift overlaps, grateful that our interaction was limited to 5 minutes. My log entries became increasingly detailed, specifically referencing Diana's calls when I had to follow up on cross-shift issues. The firing. In summer 2020, after returning from an out-of-state vacation visiting friends, my supervisor approached me after hours. "Can you walk me through how you handle the language updates?" he asked, his expression unreadable. I explained the process in detail. He listened silently, then said, "You haven't been doing it correctly. We're terminating your employment." The alleged issue? I had switched the date codes between English and French files, even though the newest update had already been applied correctly. Living in an at-will employment state, I assumed I had no recourse. I could quit any time, and they could fire me anytime, except for legally protected reasons like discrimination. Feeling defeated, I started applying everywhere. During my job search, I stumbled upon an employment law website. Curiosity led me to read through it, and I discovered something fascinating. Our employee handbook contained a job security clause stating they would never lay off employees. Instead, we'd be retrained and transferred within the company if positions were eliminated. This sounded great on paper, but they often manufactured reasons to fire people to circumvent it. Their expensive legal team had overlooked something crucial. While state legislation supported at-will employment, they missed the case law, specifically, a state Supreme Court ruling that determined a job security clause effectively waived the employer's at-will rights, requiring just cause for termination. The revenge armed with this information, I consulted an employment lawyer. During our first meeting, she leaned forward, interested as I explained my situation. "Tell me everything you know about these updates," she said. "Well," I replied, pulling out my laptop, "I can prove their accusation doesn't hold water. I demonstrated how I ran the same software on my personal computer. The file dates they used against me were actually embedded in the version number. I showed her multiple tests proving that applying the same update repeatedly wouldn't change the date daily, as my former employer claimed." "There's more," I continued, revealing how the task used to be automated. A script handled everything until a vendor site change broke it. The fix? Deleting 3 characters in 1 line of code. Nobody bothered fixing it after the original programmer retired. I also pointed out the task was only scheduled for weekdays. If it was so crucial, as they claimed during my firing, why ignore weekends and holidays? "Look here, the vendor even pushed updates on Christmas morning." My lawyer's eyes lit up. "This is exactly what we need," she said, gathering the evidence. When she contacted them, presenting both the legal oversight and my evidence, they quickly moved to settle. Their high-priced lawyers had failed to do their homework. But I had. I'm grateful to all the librarians who taught me research skills over the years. Those lessons paid off significantly. The aftermath remained mostly hidden from me since corporate headquarters was in another state. I heard through the grapevine that they quickly revised the employee handbook before cutting my settlement check. As for Diana, karma caught up about a year later. A former coworker posted on social media about leaving the company, so I messaged him. "What happened over there?" I asked. "Major revenue loss," he replied. "They closed our entire office. Only about 10 out of 50 people got transferred. Diana's gone too." Looking back, it became clear. My termination was just a disguised layoff. But their legal oversight made all the difference. The next one is an entitled people story. When I bought my house 5 years ago, the thing that sold me was the backyard. It wasn't huge, but it had this beautiful oak tree that provided the perfect amount of shade in the summer. I knew immediately I wanted to build a wooden patio where I could sit out with friends, have BBQs, and just enjoy being outside. I spent 3 months building that patio. Weekends, evenings after work, any free time I had went into making it perfect. I'm not a professional carpenter by any means, but I did my research, talked to people at the hardware store, and watched more YouTube tutorials than I care to admit. By the time I finished, I had this gorgeous wooden deck that wrapped around the oak tree with built-in seating and even a small area for a grill. I was damn proud of it. My next-door neighbor to the right, Janet, seemed fine with it. She even complimented me when I finished, saying it looked professionally done. The neighbor to my left, however, well, that's where the trouble started. She moved in about a year after I built the patio. Her name was Linda, but everyone on the block eventually started calling her Karen behind her back. From day one, she had complaints about everything. My grass was too long, my trash cans stayed at the curb too long, my car was parked incorrectly in my own driveway. At first, I tried to be understanding. Moving is stressful and maybe she was just having a hard time adjusting. But after 3 months of constant nitpicking, I started to avoid her as much as possible. Then came the day I'll never forget. I was away on a business trip for 4 days. When I got back, I walked into my backyard to water my plants and nearly had a heart attack. Half of my wooden patio, the beautiful patio I had spent months building, was gone. Just gone. Cut clean through with what must have been a chainsaw. I immediately called the police, thinking someone had vandalized my property. When the officer arrived, he took one look and said, "Neighbor dispute?" Before I could answer, Karen came storming out of her house. "That's right, officer! I removed the part of his deck that was on my property," she announced proudly, as if she deserved a medal. I was speechless. The officer looked uncomfortable and explained this was a civil matter, not criminal, and suggested we check property lines and try to work it out between ourselves. After he left, I tried to talk to Karen rationally. "Why didn't you just come talk to me if you thought there was an issue? I shouldn't have to talk to you about your trespassing on my property," she snapped. "I gave you a chance to fix it yourself. I left 3 notes. This was news to me. "What notes?" "The ones I put on your front door while you were gone." I checked my security camera footage later. She had indeed left notes, at 11 p.m. each night when she knew I was away. Then, without waiting for me to return, she took matters into her own hands. I decided to get a professional survey done. It cost me $800, but I needed to know exactly where the property line was. 2 days later, I had my answer. My patio was entirely on my property. In fact, the line was about 8 inches past where my patio had ended. She had destroyed my property for nothing. When I showed Karen the survey, she scoffed. "That's obviously wrong. My realtor showed me where the line was when I bought the house." "Your realtor isn't a licensed surveyor," I pointed out. "I don't care. I know my rights." At this point, I was done being nice. I called a lawyer. My lawyer advised me to document everything: the damage, the cost of the original materials and labor, the survey results, and any interactions with Karen. He also suggested I get quotes for repairs and take plenty of pictures. I ended up suing her for $12,000 to $7,000 for the damage to the patio, $800 for the survey, and the rest for my time and the mental anguish she caused. It might sound like a lot, but replacing half a custom-built patio isn't cheap, especially when you factor in matching the weathered wood of the remaining half. The day of court arrived, and Karen showed up with her own evidence, a printout from Google Maps showing what she claimed was the property line, and a statement from her realtor, not notarized, saying he had shown her where the boundary was. The judge was not impressed. "Miss Linda," he said, using her actual name, "do you understand what a professional survey is?" "Yes, but..." And do you understand that your realtor's opinion does not supersede a professional survey? But he told me. Furthermore, the judge continued, even if the patio had crossed the property line, the correct course of action would have been to address it legally, not to destroy someone else's property. Karen's face went from confident to panicked as she realized she was losing. She tried to argue that I had been difficult to work with, but the judge pointed out that I was literally not even home when she decided to take a chainsaw to my patio. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor for the full amount. Karen was ordered to pay me $12,000 plus court costs. As we left the courtroom, Karen hissed at me, "This isn't over!" But it was, at least legally. She paid the judgment after another trip to court to enforce it, and I used the money to rebuild my patio, this time with a small fence marking the property line, just to be safe. Karen continued to be a nightmare neighbor for about 6 more months. She'd call the city on me for any little thing, a branch that fell in my yard after a storm, my garbage can being too full, you name it. But each time the inspectors found nothing worth citing. Then, suddenly, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. I later heard through another neighbor that she'd complained to her realtor about the awful neighbors and decided to move somewhere with decent people. The new family that moved in couldn't be nicer. They have 2 kids who love playing in their backyard, and they even asked if their kids could pet my dog when he's outside with me. What a concept, actually talking to your neighbors instead of trying to destroy their property. The patio is now fully restored, and I added some improvements. Better lighting, a small fire pit, and yes, that fence marking the property line. It's become the neighborhood gathering spot for summer BBQs. Everyone comes over. Except Karen, of course, who I heard moved to a condo with a strict HOA somehow. That seems fitting. Looking back, I'm still amazed at how someone could be so entitled that they'd destroy property rather than have a conversation. But I learned some valuable lessons. Document everything, know your property boundaries, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself legally when someone crosses the line, literally or figuratively. The best part, every time I sit on my patio now, I appreciate it even more than before. Nothing makes you value something like almost losing half of it to a chainsaw-wielding neighbor. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened a few years ago when I worked at McDonald's. The one I worked in was near a bunch of schools, so most of the staff was high school kids. As summer vacation started, we began having the trouble of an employee getting break and then spending their break eating their meal and conversating with their friends who were still working in the kitchen. It was having a seriously bad effect on productivity as well as posing quite a few health risks, so our manager finally initiated a rule that if you were on your break, you couldn't leave the break room until your break was over. This went swimmingly until the kids went back to school. We then had a new problem. Short staffing during break cycles meant our ticket times would skyrocket during rushes. Management lifted the rule so that employees on break could clock in early and help out with the rush, however. The district manager didn't like the implications of employees working shortened or no-break shifts and forcefully reinstated the rule. They also doubled down by saying that employees who tried to work during their scheduled break would be written up and/or terminated for doing so. QMC. The date was 4/20ths a day when nobody wants to be working at any fast food place, much less McDonald's. We had been getting slammed so hard from the open of the store that we called in extra help from other stores, including the regional and district managers. As the break cycle began, the management was pleased with the sub-2-minute ticket times they had managed to maintain. A few breaks through, and we were managing well. Then came my break. As soon as I sat down to eat, someone came into the store and ordered 47 double quarter pounders. This was right after the Fresh Initiative, where all quarter pounders were made fresh, so this was already a minor panic. Immediately after that order, someone in the drive-thru ordered 75 20-piece nugget meal. The amount of panic in the kitchen was palpable. I was comfortably lounging in a chair browsing my phone and enjoying my meal while the kitchen struggled to keep up with the orders. As ticket times began to soar, the management did exactly as I expected. District manager came into the break room and demanded me to end my break early and help in the kitchen. My response was very simply, "I'm sorry, but according to the rules you made, I can be written up or terminated for completing your request." I then continued browsing my phone, trying to enjoy the last 10 minutes of my break. The regional manager entered the room and said that he would personally terminate me if I didn't do the thing that I wasn't supposed to do. The other employee who was on break with me immediately rose and clocked in despite still having 10 minutes left on her break. She was written up for breaking the rule after the shift was over, so I felt good sitting in my chair and continuing to ignore them. In the aftermath, the people who made the giant orders took what was made after half an hour and left with refunds for the unmade food, nearly $150 each. Customers who were waiting for smaller orders were compensated with gift cards for their patience, yet many walked out without even getting their orders. We paid out nearly $1,500 in gift cards. Because customers were walking out on orders without collecting them, we had nearly $5,000 in food waste that night. All of the closers went home with nearly 2 bundle boxes of burgers, fries, and nuggets. Regional and district manager were moved to a different region. The rule was edited to say that you were able to clock back in early at the manager's discretion in the event of a rush. Because I was the only employee who held his ground against the regional and district managers during the rush, I was rewarded with free meals and drinks until I moved away from my hometown and couldn't eat at that McDonald's anymore. Although, when I come to visit friends, I occasionally get rung up a manager discount by the few employees who still remember me. The next one is an entitled people story. A few days ago, I posted an aita and realized something. I may have started doxing myself by speaking of the bottle deposit in my state. I may as well come out and say it since I probably shouldn't be posting here anymore anyway. But I'm not in the part of the US I was previously telling people. I only said it was that part because I didn't want to risk people trying to figure out where I live and who I am. It's pretty much the only thing I fibbed about. But in retrospect, it's probably redundant now that I'm no longer posting about Dan, or my ex-sil, or my parents. Dan and my nibblings are doing great BTW, and yes, Dan is still living in his own camper out of our parents' backyard since he gave his room to his son. He still wants to buy his own truck to go camping with it sometime. But supporting his family comes first, before a fun vehicle, and he's still in financial recovery after what his ex-wife put him through, pissing away his savings and racking up debt. And on top of that, Dan has saving for his kids' future colleges to worry about. So a truck is not on the priority list. My parents are doing good. My mother is more emotionally stable around me now. She went through a bad phase of getting stressed at the drop of a feather and apologizing to everyone constantly. Even seeing any sort of story remotely similar to the ones I posted would send her back to therapy. But she's finally making great progress. My father isn't exactly cheerful around me. We're amicable with each other. Even drank together a few times. But we lost out on truly bonding as father and son due to the past favoritism for Dan. But he's been working his ass off to better himself, and I appreciate his hard work. My parents can't change the past, so they're just working hard to move forward. As for my ex-sil, she's basically stopped bothering to see her 3 kids she had with Dan at all, and has even been talking about completely giving up her parental rights to them over and over again, but never seems to go through with it despite never being around. She got one hell of a cheese slap in life a year ago when she got a DUI and had to take classes and remain sober for 6 months, which drove her absolutely nuts. We all expected her to cave and start drinking again when she wasn't supposed to, but she held to it. I guess she was afraid of what would happen if she broke the court order. She got her license back, but currently has to drive with a breathalyzer in her car. She can't have an ounce of alcohol in her, or the car won't drive. She was trying to flirt with Dan off and on for a while, but he never took the bait, so she moved on to dating someone else now, who I bet she's making do everything for her. I guess in a way that's good news for us. But I pity whatever guy she roped in. None of us put baby trapping past her. We're all glad she's out of our lives. But my nibblings still lost their mother because she's an entitled, shopaholic, narcissistic cheater who got karma cheese slapped. Saying she was cheese slapped has become a running gag when talking about her since I first coined that line. My parents, Dan, and several of my friends keep saying, "Oh no, they got cheese slapped," as a joke when karma hits people they know or know of. Not sure if she knows about it or not, but we don't care. I'm pretty sure she was the one who egged my truck on Halloween a year and a half ago, but it's not happened since. Anyway, last week I had a huge bag full of cans I was going to go cash in, and some woman stole them out of the back of my truck while I was having lunch. The bottle drop wasn't far, so I headed that way and caught her lugging my bag of cans. I pulled over and confronted her. She denied the theft until I threatened to call police, and mentioned the place I ate lunch likely caught her on CCTV. She griped about money being tight, and I didn't care. She dropped the bag and cussed me out before I could call the cops. I told this story to some friends later, and only one person was upset with me. And it was the now ex-girlfriend of one of my best friends. I was really worried this incident ruined a relationship. But it turns out the breakup was a long time coming. When I argued with this woman, she yelled at me that the woman who stole the bag of cans out of the back of my truck was possibly homeless. And I went too far chasing her down and making her return the cans. She called me an a-hole who can't give people a break because I was so wronged in the past. And then she sarcastically mocked me by putting on her boyfriend's baseball cap and acting like me in the worst parody way she could do. But nobody was laughing, especially not her now ex-boyfriend. He yanked the hat off her head and told her that went too far, and she yelled that my taking some cans back from a possibly broke or homeless woman was too far and stormed out of the bar. I ended up feeling conflicted after a few more drinks at home and didn't sleep well because the stress made my insomnia act up again, so I posted on Reddit to ask if I was in the wrong and got a pretty much 90% NTA. I couldn't go into full detail in that subreddit because of character limit though. Well, because my friends know about this Reddit account, it wasn't long at all before I was getting phone calls and text messages, so I logged out and stopped answering comments. Crap was hitting the fan fast. My friend and his now ex-girlfriend had a massive argument over the phone during their lunch breaks, and they officially broke up that evening at his place. The ex-girlfriend also messaged me to call me an ass one more time, and told me I'd ruined everything. I didn't respond and just blocked the number. I never gave her my number before either. Jury is still out on how she got it. But it wouldn't have been hard. She could have copied it from my friend's phone, or asked someone else who knows. I was really upset and stressed that I was the cause of the breakup, but then my friend came over with some beer and told me that he'd only been dating that woman for 5 or 6 months, and she was constantly nagging him, trying to milk him for money to buy her things, always took alcohol from his fridge to take back to her place without asking, wanted him to pay for every meal when they ate out since the first date, and was constantly on her phone to the point of it being extremely annoying. Even on date nights, she was always on her phone. That's pretty much how their Valentine's Day went. He knew then he wanted to end things soon because he felt like he was dating an entitled teenager. He also mentioned she was being really rough with him as of late. He wouldn't elaborate on what he meant by rough, so I let it go. Either way, he used the situation to finally end the relationship. He said she screamed and cried, cussed him out, and gaslit by denying all the points he made about her. But he had none of it, and told her they were through. She packed any stuff she had in his apartment and left. He said she also tried to take some stuff that wasn't hers too. Like his MJ stash and the coffee maker. He loves coffee, and has one of those coffee makers that dispenses the coffee from those little plastic cups. She apparently argued that he got her hooked on good coffee, and he could just get another machine. That's when he started filming her and told her to get out before he involved police. He says he's not sure she wanted the coffee maker just for good coffee, or if she just wanted the machine to spite him. Personally, I make my coffee with a plain Jane coffee pot because the other people living in my house share in the morning coffee too. Before that, I just drank instant. Back to my place, I still have a couple of guys renting rooms from me to ease the cost of my mortgage, and you could say those guys are real bros. They came out to join us in drinking beer. The 4 of us got drunk playing UNO, and he who smelt it dealt it, and then I finally got some deep sleep, albeit on my couch after too much beer. And only for about 7 hours. My phone's alarm may as well have been nails on a chalkboard to my ears when it went off in the morning. My friend left my phone right near my head after I passed out. That wasn't the only thing he left. I woke up with a square of sandwich cheese on my face. God damn it! He cheese slapped me! I laughed and immediately felt the sting of my hangover. I was too drunk to feel it when he threw it on my face after I passed out, so he just left it there before he went to bed in my room for the night so he wouldn't need to go home. Either way, we both had a painful hangover laugh about it. The both of us had to call in and come to work late to ease our morning hangovers, and I was basically running on energy drinks all day. My friend's ex has not made any more attempts to contact me or him so far. She's blocked a whole bunch of people on her social media and is essentially out of the whole friend group now. Turns out a lot of people didn't like her anyway, so no one else is losing sleep over it. I really shouldn't be posting here again, but just to clarify a couple of details. The bag I was using to haul the cans was a large transparent bag made to cover mattresses. You can use them as giant garbage bags once they've been taken off the mattress. And a friend of mine works warehousing and delivering mattresses, and he gives the used mattress bags out for free to friends and family. They can hold a lot and don't leak or tear as much as regular garbage bags if in good shape. I also only buy cans and plastic bottles for beverages because they're much lighter than glass when bagged up. Second thing I want to clarify, I did get my friend's permission to make this post since the situation heavily involved him. He's pretty chill about it, and jokingly said I could owe him a 6-pack of talls for the whole mess. And even though he said it as a joke, yesterday I left the 6-pack at his front door with a pink bow on it before ringing the doorbell and bolting. He thought that was pretty funny. Personally, I'm gonna lay off the booze for a little while anyway, so yeah, I hope I don't get tempted to ever come back here to post anything again. Anyway,